Hi everyone, my name is Anna. I'm an international preacher. I hope you are having a wonderful day today. I picked a very special and meaningful topic for us today, which is what is true faith and how we can increase our faith in God. I also share with you my little experience. Please do not go away. Stay tuned till the end. So, what is faith? Speaking of what faith is, some people think that forsaking our homes and careers, working hard for the Lord, spreading the gospel everywhere, we can establish churches are manifestations of faith in God. But these things mean that we have true faith in God? If so, when we experience disasters or fleshly illnesses or something goes wrong with our families, how come we become weak and negative? And we misunderstand God and blame God, and some even discouraged and disappointed in God and leave Him. This shows that enthusiastically we work spending, suffering, paying a price for God does not mean that we have true faith in God. So, what is true faith overall? So let's see some passages about what faith is.
Faith is the genuine belief and the sincere heart that humans should possess when they cannot see or touch something. When God's work does not align with the human notion, when it is beyond human reach. This is the faith that I speak of. People are in need of faith during times of hardship and refinement. And faith is something that is followed by refinement. Refinement and faith cannot be separated. No matter how God works and no matter your environment, you are able to pursue life and seek the truth and seek knowledge of God's work and have an understanding of His actions. And you are able to act according to the truth. Doing so is what it is to have true faith. And doing so shows that you have not lost faith in God. You can only have true faith in God if you are able to persist in pursuing the truth through refinement. If you are able to truly love God and do not develop doubts about Him, if no matter what He does, you still practice the truth to satisfy Him, and if you are able to seek in the depths for His will and be considerate of His will. When you face suffering, you must be able to lay aside concern for the flesh and to not make complaints against God. When God hides Himself from you, you must be able to have the faith to follow Him, to maintain your previous love without allowing it to falter or dissipate. No matter what God does, you must submit to His design and be prepared to curse your own flesh rather than make complaints against Him. When you are faced with trials, you must satisfy God. Though you may weep bitterly or feel reluctant to part with some beloved objects, only this is true love and faith.
As you can see from these passages, true faith doesn't refer to being able to enthusiastically work or spend for God when we enjoy grace. Instead, it refers to being able not to complain to God, but to stand in a position of created being, seek the truth with an obedient heart, achieve an understanding of God's will forsake the flesh, stay loyal to God, and gladly abandon our personal interest to practice the truth and satisfy God when encounter situation that works with our own notions. No matter whether there are hardships, refinements, disasters, setbacks, or failures, and regardless how great our fleshly suffering is, this is what true faith means. Take, for example, Job. He was faced with Satan's temptations and attacks, losing his families, enormous wealth, and all children, and being covered in boils. When Job experienced these extraordinary sufferings, his friend and his wife didn't understand him and instead judged and attacked him. But Job, he didn't utter one word of complaint. He had a true faith in God and believed that these things befalling him were permitted by God. So he bowed down before God and prayed to see God's will. By seeking, he understood that everything he had was bestowed by God. That was natural and right for God to take these things away, and that as a created being, he should obey God unconditionally. So, in his extreme pain, Job is able to say, "Naked came out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return. Jehovah gave, and Jehovah has taken away. Bless the name of Jehovah." He also say, "Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and we shall not receive evil?" From this, we can see that when encountering hardship and refinements, Job didn't lose faith in God or speak sinful, but he could seek God's will and prefer to suffer in the flesh to maintain his faith and devotion to and obedience to God. That is humiliated Satan and bore resounding and beautiful witness for God. This is what true faith means. Abraham is another example. When God asked him to offer up his only one son, though he didn't accord with his notions and he felt pained, he was still able to hold on to his faith, God, and submit to God unconditionally, willing to bear the pain and return beloved only son to God. Because he knew Isaac had been bestowed by God in the first place, and that is, as a created being, he should obey Creator when God wanted to take Isaac away. And this is real manifestations of true faith in God. From all this, we can see that only expressions like Abraham's and Job's show genuine faith, no matter what circumstances, no matter how much they don't fit with our desires, and no matter how great our flesh suffering, we shouldn't misunderstand, blame, or argue with God, but we should completely obey God and stand testimony for God. This is what true faith is. So then, how can we develop true faith in God? When we believe in God and spend for Him, we should love God with all our hearts, our minds, no matter how much work we do or how much we suffer. There must be no personal ambition or impurity, and we must be devoted purely to obey and satisfy God without demand for God recompenses. In face of trials and tribulation, we shouldn't complain against or betray God, but should obey God's restraints and God's arrangements and bear beautiful and resounding testimony for God. Only these will be people who love God with all our hearts, soul, minds. Once we understood God's will and requirements and know our own shortcomings, we will become willing to forsake the flesh to worship, obey God unconditionally, and to stand witness to satisfy God. This way we develop true faith in God and stand testimony and satisfy God. Matthew 22:37, Jesus says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with your whole your soul, and with your your mind." Now I would like to share my experience with you, my dear brothers and sisters. When I accepted God's work, there was battle within my family. Satan stepped in and I was fighting against me and my son's life. 1 month later, after I had accepted God's work, all of a sudden my son's behavior changed and he became a bad boy. He started following the friends to football training, played online gaming, went to some houses parties, enjoyed the trend of his life, and carried evil friends, and so on. He reaches the point that whenever he goes to my room, he looks for my bank card to enjoy with his friends. When they go out, before I accept God, my son seemed to be a very nice person, very quiet, always at home when he's off school. Worried about my son's life. As a society, is danger. There is murder and violence around the country, especially the teenagers. I talked to him, but he didn't listen to me. My faith in God was so small. I didn't have much truth. I started worrying more and more about him. One day, the school principal called me that my son seems to cause trouble around the school, distracting other students. I talked to him, but his behavior was not changing. He was living on his phone, gaming, and with his friend all the time, 24/7. Didn't know what to do. One day, he went to play football with his friend, and he fell on the football pitch and he strained his knee very badly. I took him to the hospital, and doctor said he needed to be at home for some time until he gets well. But after 2 days, even he couldn't walk well, he continued to go to his friend's house. So the following week, I was called to go to school and to meet the head teacher of grade 10. She urgently wanted to talk to me. My son's behavior got worse. After school, he was on the bus where some teachers were on the same bus, heard him swearing at the other students. And I went to the school meeting and they decided to isolate him to the detention room, to discipline him so that his behavior could change. I was told that I should be going to school almost every day as they didn't know what to do, as my son was touching and provoking other students, especially the girls. Because multiple times of low behavior could affect other students, the school decided to swap him to another school that was very strict to help him the behavior changes. One day, very sad, I was going through emotions. I thought about my son's situation. I was weak and despair. I shed so much tears and I asked God, where are you in all this? I couldn't hide, but although in pain, accept and leave everything in God's hands. My heart was in pain. One day, during my morning devotion, I read this passage. I'll read now.
When confronting real life problems, how should you know and understand God's authority and His sovereignty? When you do not know how to understand, handle, and experience these problems, what attitude you should adopt to show your intention, your desire, and your reality of submitting to God's sovereignty and arrangement. First, you must learn to wait, then you must learn to seek, then you must learn to submit. Waiting means waiting for the time of God, awaiting the people, events, and things that He has arranged for you. Waiting for His will to gradually reveal itself to you. Seeking means observing and understand God's thoughtful intention for you through the people, events, and things that He has laid out. Understanding the truth through them, understand what human must accomplish and the ways they must keep. Understanding what results God means to achieve in human and what accomplishments He means to attain in them. Submitting, of course, refers to accepting the people, events, and things that God has orchestrating, accepting His sovereignty, and through it coming to know how the Creator dedicates man's faith, how He supplies man with His life, how He works the truth into man. All things under God's arrangements and sovereignty. Obey natural laws, and if you resolve to let God arrange and detect everything for you, you should learn to wait, you should learn to seek, you should learn to submit. This is the attitude that every person who wants to submit to God's own authority must take. The basic quality that every person who wants to accept God's sovereignty and arrangements must possess. To hold such an attitude, to possess such a quality, you must work harder, and only thus can you enter into the true reality. Amen.
This passage gave me so much strength and faith in God that my heart gradually became quieter. Because of the love that I have for my son, I was unwilling to accept his behavior and face the environment and the arrangements God had created. And I was unable to read God's words and understand the power and authority of God. I was focusing on the evil that was happening, and I forgot that God holds everything, and I should learn to wait on God's timing, learn to seek more truth and submit to God wholeheartedly. I should believe and have a true faith that God has the final say with everything that was happening in our lives. I should have faith that God is among us. Things do not happen by accident or by coincidence, but instead it's all arranged by God's hands. So after pondering about the passage of God's words, I try to practice the truth in my prayers and seek to grow and to understand God's will for me and for my son's life. I remember some words that I read before. In every step of work that God does within people, externally it appears to be interactions between people as if born of human arrangements from human interference. But behind the scenes, every step of work and everything that happened is a wager made by Satan before God, and requires people to stand firm their testimony to God. See, looking at what was happening, I could see that externally it appeared like human interference, seeing how Satan was bringing interference, difference between my sons and me in school environment and his friends. So I would stop seeking God's will and eventually stop performing my duty and give up on God. I could see also that there was a spiritual battle going on behind the scenes in the spiritual realm. As my son in a blink of an eye changed into a person that I had never met before, it becomes just like a monster. I could see that a war between us coming from dark force, while in the physical world, Satan was using my son to block me from quiet my heart and give my heart entirely to God as a created being shelter. But instead, I was constantly in a bad state. Then I went before God in prayer and I put these words into practice. First, you must learn to wait, then you must learn to seek, then you must learn to submit. Waiting means waiting for the time of God, awaiting the people, events, and things that He has arranged for you, waiting for His will to gradually reveal itself to you. After a few weeks, to my surprise, I noticed my child had changed his destructive behaviors at school and at home. He became an obedient child in terms of listening to me, helping me whenever I needed help. One day, the school phoned me saying that his behavior had changed after being to new school. He's doing well after being transferred to the new school. He's still having some fun with his friends, but not as much as before. But I'm not worried anymore. As everything is in God's hands, we put believe and trust. I have only to accept all things that come from God. Only Him decides the fate of humanity. I learned through this experience that I should focus on understand God's words as soon as I know them, obey them, and have faith and set emotions aside. Now I've been living by light, which enables me to carry on performing my duty and growing His words. God showed me that His love and care during the time with my child when I lived in the darkest moment. With that light, God wants us to come before Him at all times. But unfortunately, we are focused on what is happening in our lives and forget to go before Him in prayer and understand His heart. In times of adversity, we confide all our difficulties in Him with all our might to shed our suffering. But when things don't conform with God's arrangements and God's orchestrations, we quick fall back to our old ways and misunderstand God with our imaginations and our notions. We think that God is God who can attend all our needs and our foolish desires. When things go wrong, we quickly lose faith and blame God. One thing I understood through this experience is that very often we come before God only to seek for help and tremendous fleshly comfort for healing from disease, suffering, not because of any desire to know Him or neither to dissect and pay attention on our corrupt positions. When we are happy or have peace within our family, we reject God quickly. We don't have true love towards God. Through my experience, I see that my faith in God has grown a little bit. It doesn't matter what might be happening in my life or my surrounding. I put my trust in God and my faith in God that is there with me and see everything that is happening in my life. Through my experience, I see that faith is a choice, not a feeling. It means trust God when life doesn't make sense. Thinking that God is there for us, uttering His words and doing all His works to save us, and though we cannot see Him or touch Him, just believe wholeheartedly. Thank God for His guidance. So after listening to this preaching, my brothers and sisters, do you know what faith is? Have you found the way to develop through faith? If you have any question, please feel free to contact us through Inspirational. We are available at any time to answer any questions you might have. We also have different topics on live sermons every day in the messenger room at 8 p.m. BST. Please feel free to contact us. Thank you so much for listening to us, and God bless you. Bye bye for now.